talking about interviewing. So you've been on both sides of the coin, interviewing and being the interviewee. What tips do you have for everyone who is interviewing?
Yep. So there's a bunch of tips. Really, number one is you really want to be yourself. Be honest, be open, be transparent. There's nothing worse than just faking it, and then ultimately you end up in a job where you slowly have to start becoming yourself, and then the real you kind of shows up. I always, before an interview, would record myself on my phone, practicing that interview, because it really helps you to get all the quirks out, all the little weird things that you might do or sound like. So that's great. I mean, put that phone up, just prop it up there, and go through some of the basic questions that would help you to iron out some of the weird things, the just weird facial expressions you might have, whatever it is. So you want to practice your interview. When it comes time to be in the interview, dress clean, dress professional, crisp shoes, you don't want all scuff marks on them, you want to be in proper clinical attire. Whatever you wore on one of your nice days in clinic when you were in optometry school, think of that best day when you really felt like you looked the best, that's what you should be wearing in your interview. When you're in the interview, you really want to, like I said in the resume section, talk about how you're going to drive value for the practice. All candidates look the same on paper. All candidates sound the same in interviews. So, you're going to be going through your resume. Oh, I fit scleral contacts. Oh, I helped a lot of patients with vision therapy. I diagnosed this type of glaucoma and have all this experience, and I went to this VA hospital. It all kind of sounds the same. But the candidate who talks about driving revenue, the candidate who talks about bringing in new clinical modalities, the candidate who talks about helping with the practice's social media, marketing and advertising, those candidates sound different. They say, this person's going to help me build my practice. Even if it's a corporate or a sublease type of opportunity, those candidates are focused on growth, right? Optometry, no matter what, is always a bit of a retail business. So it's great to talk about those things and diverge a little bit from patient care to focus on those things. Another big tip would be matching the vibe of the employer, right? So let me give you an example. We have employer A who's very laid back, they wear polo shirts, no clinical coats, they hug and kiss every patient, it's all about family. You got employer B who's a little bit more clinical, always dressed professionally. Everything is kind of to the book. They participate in every study that there is, and they're known for their clinical expertise. You don't want to go into employer A, who's much more laid back, and be very clinically uptight. You won't fit the vibe of that practice. Same thing, you don't want to go to employer B who's very clinically focused and very much not as laid back, and be all happy-go-lucky, laid back, everything's cool, don't worry, no sweat type of vibe. You won't match it. So no matter what your clinical skills are, or how great you are, or how much money you're asking for, if you don't fit the vibe, you're just not a cultural fit. So try to identify the cultural fit by researching that practice, maybe doing on a phone screen, asking questions around the vibe of the practice, or maybe meeting that doctor at a CE event prior to interviewing. Those things will help you match the vibe and understand how that fit is. That's a really kind of like weird niche tip that I don't think a lot of people know or try to do. Ultimately, interviewing is something you get better with time, and I would try to have a spouse or a friend, partner interview you and just shake out all those weird loose tendencies you have. It'll help you.
Yeah, and we'll do some mock interviews here in just a moment, but if I had to share my number one tip about interviewing, it would be that your interview starts the second you enter that practice.
That's right.
And it's not just about interviewing with the doctor who runs the business or the practice manager. It starts from the moment you walk in and you see the receptionist. Everyone on staff will have an opinion about you, and they will all share their opinion when you leave. So you should, when you walk in, the first thing I recommend you do is go up to the receptionist. Hello, I am so-and-so. I'm here for an interview. How are you today? Because that is very, very important.
Yeah, I think to an over extra brownie point, so to say, treat the staff really well. I mean, you'll be interacting with them more than almost everyone in the practice. So winning over the staff, being really kind, smiling. Last interview tip I'd say, I know we're kind of bouncing around with things, but you've got to modulate your voice tone. You need to add emphasis when it matters. This is what keeps things alive. Just talking in monotone. I was at the VA hospital and I saw about 13 patients a day. My clinical preceptors really loved me. and ultimately I was a great clinician at the practice.
And I like glaucoma,
Yeah.
and I like to see patients.
Versus, when I was at the VA, I would see 13, that's not a lot, 13 patients a day, and I really made an impact on that practice. And you know what? My clinical preceptors loved me for it. That's such a different type of experience, and it also shows the way you're going to interact with patients. And so it's all about here. It's kind of how you say things, not necessarily what you say. So practice that as well. Watch a TED Talk or two on body language, voice tone, having good posture, getting the good, hormones pumping through your body, the cortisol, the excitement stuff for your interview, rather than just, this kind of posture and stuff.
Yeah, great tip.
Yep. So let's do a mock interview. I'll be the candidate. You could be the employer.
Sounds good.
Do you want to just set the stage for? Let's give you the questions. We can do
Okay.
that. So let's go ahead and assume that this is a private practice. We'll say it's there's 2 doctors. I'll be the 3rd doctor interviewing. Ultimately,
It's a busy practice.
we'll say it's San Diego, California, beachside. We're in Encinitas today. High demand.
Yep. A lot of applicants. So this is the 6th person that I'm interviewing within a week.
Yep.
So thanks so much for interviewing with our practice.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me in.
Yeah. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Matt, as you know. I've been local here in the Encinitas community my whole life. I went to SCCO for optometry school, but mainly I want to come back to this community because it means so much to me. It's in my roots. The community here of surfers and folks into action sports is near and dear to me. So giving back to them is really important. Just in general, I love ocular disease. That's what I focused on. Clinical modalities outside of that don't matter as much to me as ocular disease. It's so important. And otherwise, I'm focused on very long term. For me, it's about practice growth and seeing us expand, help more patients, but also help the practice grow in terms of revenue. I've got all my hobbies and things like that, so happy to share some of those later if you'd like.
Yeah. So do you surf here as well? Do you like to surf? Where do you typically go?
I can't surf, by the way, but I'll pretend I do. Yep, so, absolutely. I've surfed since I was a little kid out here. And, I've actually seen you around in the community too. I know you're into that as well.
I am.
So, that's absolutely my thing. Every Saturday and Sunday, I love to get out there, even if it's, I'm working hard on Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, after work hours, of course, right? Yeah. So I kind of know, and you answered this because you didn't know what questions I'm here asking you, but the next question I was going to ask you was, what brought you to apply at our practice, and what makes you a good fit? And you kind of already answered that, but...
Yeah, so I understand that you guys are looking for your 3rd optometrist now. You've got your contact lens side of your practice covered. I know you're working with pediatrics and vision therapy, but there's an aging community here, and clearly bringing in medical optometry, the ocular disease side of things, is what the practice needs next. So it's a natural fit for me. There were other practices, and there are other opportunities, but they focus more on primary care. And like I told you in the beginning, flexing that ocular disease muscle, doing what I love every day, that's what I've got to focus on. I want to be the best clinician I could possibly be. That is why I took the time to do residency in ocular disease at SUNY Optometry. And I really feel that I could bring more than just great clinical care. You see, when I was there, I made sure over that course of my residency and in 4th year to really learn coding and billing. So John Rapakis, Scott Morris, a few of those other folks were mentors of mine, and I made sure to learn and take courses on coding and billing and learn about how I can help the practice, not just with clinical skills, but to expand and grow and bill correctly and generate revenue. So I think it's unique for me to apply here because I can bring in a turnkey solution. You don't need to worry about how are you gonna do all the admin work around these things. My patient schedule might not be fully busy at first, so I can see the patients, take care of the admin work, and I'm even working on a staff training for this. So in some of my downtime, I want to put together just a basic way that the staff can get onboarded with ocular disease in the practice, and we can work together on that. I want to make sure that you're comfortable with it, but I would love to help if that's something that you'd like me to do.
We'll skip this one because you already talked about it in your last answer, just about what could you bring that other candidates cannot bring.
Yep.
And you spoke a lot about disease and being able to bill and code and some management, which is great. So here's another question. Next question I would ask is, what is one of the hardest things you dealt with in optometry school, and what did you do to overcome it?
So you're making me bring back all the bad memories of optometry school.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
You can go with the funny vibe if you've got that relationship that could help. You want to be yourself, be comfortable. Sure. So look, optometry school was really difficult in general. We had a great board passing rate, but that meant that classes were really tough and really demanding, and clinical schedule was really demanding. And I think overall juggling that while trying to learn things outside of clinical lessons. I was the type of guy, I was the individual who always was trying to learn more, because I knew that when I got out in the real world here, that those skills were going to be even more important than clinical skills. So I really upheld myself to not only get my studies down, not only be a great clinician, but to learn things around the business side of optometry and just being a smart individual in business practice. So I demanded a lot of myself. And I think, how did I overcome such a busy, difficult schedule? Staying positive, staying focused. Always making sure to work on myself, getting into the gym, eating healthy, saying no to social events sometimes, being really focused, really positive, and just never letting myself down, healthy habits, and no matter how difficult things got, just practicing overcoming hurdles, staying really focused, really positive, and that's kind of my mantra for life. I truly feel there's nothing that could get in my way, and I'll always make something feel positive or reframe it to be positive.
Yeah, well, we carry a positive vibe in this office. You know, we're in San Diego here, so that is good to hear. I think you'll fit in quite well.
Awesome.
Yeah. What would you do with the time in between patients if there's a cancellation or a no-show? So, okay, your schedule might not be jam-packed, but there are some times when patients cancel or they might not show up. What would you do in that time?
Yeah. So as I said before, something really important is bringing in ocular disease. I want to make sure we are billing medical insurance plans or even private pay to ensure that we're growing that side of our practice. So I honestly think that would take up about 75% of my time. That's going to be ensuring that everyone is comfortable bringing on this new modality, looking into various equipment or things that we need to ultimately grow the practice or properly test and diagnose patients. And really just hosting the time with staff, with even you, to tell you what our workflow is going to be. I think the other 25% of the time, I'd like to work on building our marketing for the practice. I want to do everything from go door to door. We're in a bit of there's a lot of businesses around where we are. So I'd like to get us some pamphlets made, some trifold brochure type of things, where we can let patients know the different insurances we accept and just let them know that a new doctor is in the community. But also some digital marketing. I understand social media, Instagram and Facebook well, and I think there's a lot of great opportunities there, from geolocated Facebook ads to just showing and humanizing our practice by shooting some great Instagram stories and clips to let people know we're in the community. We might be able to donate to local surf events, things like that, just to put ourselves out there. Those things help to build our brand equity and really can generate new patient leads. So any downtime, that's what I love. I'm just going to put my time into that.
Yeah, great. Great. Well, it's very important as a new doctor joining the practice that you are willing to market yourself, because part of joining any practice is going to be to build your own practice within the practice.
Yeah.
So that's great to hear.
For sure.
Our practice, and some of these questions might kind of contradict some of the other questions asking, but I want to provide a variety of situations for everybody watching. So now we're pretending that we're a small practice, okay? So just to paint the scene. So our practice is small, and but we're growing, and we tend to take turns doing chores around here. Vacuuming, cleaning bathrooms, cleaning the carpet, dusting, that kind of thing, because it's just myself and my wife, and we have Mary at the front desk who you met when you walked in. So it's really just us three. And are you comfortable assisting in those kind of things?
I welcome it. For me, I like the underdog story. I like starting out at the bare bones and growing something. If we don't, or I can't participate in those things, what will we have to look back on? I welcome those things. I look forward to the day 5-10 years from now when we kind of joke about those things and say, remember when we had to do all of these things ourselves, look how far we've grown. And I want to help bring the practice there. I don't mind doing those things. I'm pretty organized in type A anyway, so even if we had a cleaning staff or something like that, I'd still pitch in. So that's important, and happy to help out with those things, no questions asked.
So This is a general question, and you do such a good job at this interviewing process. You answered a lot of these questions that I'd prepared just kind of in some of your other responses, but what can you do to help my practice grow? And you kind of already talked about that with ocular disease. But yeah, why don't you talk a little bit more? Why don't we talk specifically about maybe not so much help us grow. Let's go from a different angle other than bringing a new modality into the practice, because I think you've done a good job speaking about that, but maybe a little bit more about the marketing aspect of it. So, because I think that is really important, and as we know from studies we've done, surveys we've done, a lot of optometry practices don't do marketing well. And they don't spend money on marketing. They don't, not because they don't want to, they just don't know where to start.
So I'm going to have downtime in between patients, and I intend to fill that with marketing. Look, I understand your practice is at $850,000 in gross revenue, and you want to generate $1 million. So we need to close that gap. So ultimately, we need to generate X amount of patients that produce X amount of per patient revenue to close that $150,000 gap. So we should try to bring in, anywhere from, let's just make it up, 10 to 20 new patients per week, right? It's a big goal. We're going to have to do it though. But look, here in the community, there's a lot we can do. There's both the in-person side and the digital side. There's community events here. There's going door to door. There's definitely local community events. So I know that the Whole Foods here, they actually welcome lunch and learn. So you can go in and they will accept someone to speak on cataract surgery, and local seniors come and things like that to hear things new. There's also a pharmacy here that does something very similar. It's a holistic pharmacy, and they welcome speakers. That's a great way to bring in new patients. I know there's a few other corporate businesses here, and corporate businesses, as long as you get through to the HR person, they love doing lunch and learns where you go in and speak. But the good thing is that corporate business, they do accept VSP insurance, so it's great for us to build that side of things. I can go and do those things on hours where I'm not seeing patients. We can talk about that later around how that might look. And then also we can do a digital marketing side. So the main avenues to focus on would be your website. So I can work with your website designer to ensure the information's fresh. I've got a friend here who does photography. So I think humanizing the practice a little bit more, we can get them to do new headshots of everyone, make the site look great. But then also on social media, just posting great content on our practice's blog, but also just taking out the phone and saying, hey, we're doing, it's the holidays now, look how we decorated the office, things like that to humanize the practice, making sure we're tagging San Diego to show up in local business search and things like that. Also just looking at our Google for Business listing, ensuring that all the hours are up to date. We've got some nice pictures of the practice if people do that, and monitoring those things. I'd also suggest just putting a little bit of money behind something like Google AdWords, which is ads that will show up when people search for optometrist in Google. Usually I've seen that you can generate about $2 or $3 per click, and people will call directly from the ad, so we can track how good we're doing. But ultimately, we need to get new patients in, and then the other part of it, we're gonna have to look together, how are we maximizing patient revenue? Do we have premium products they can buy? Are we properly ensuring that they're getting all diagnostic testing, working on the correct follow-up schedule? Even something as simple as when they leave the room, just saying, look, here's my card. If you have any family or friends that also are in need of an exam, please let them know. And then something I like to do is, at the end of the exam, email every patient just with a personal email that lets them know we're thankful for them coming in, and that has our contact information. I think that could help to get us follow-ups and things like that. So we've really got to work all ends of this. I would love to meet quarterly with you to discuss how we're doing and making sure we're improving at a good cadence and getting closer to that goal.
Yeah, those are all good ideas. When I started too, I actually did handwritten cards. I got some handwritten cards. I was a new doctor, and after every patient I saw, I would write a card signed by myself, of course, with something in there, and patients loved it. And it really helped me grow in the practice. So, same. Yeah, and if you might not be an expert on everything that Matt spoke about, Google AdWords, you might not know those things, but you know a lot of things, especially about social media, website, e-commerce. So you can use those things to your advantage, and those are very applicable to marketing and building a practice. So now I'm going to present a sort of curveball. I'm going to throw you a curveball, and I'm going to tell you that a little bit about your patient load.
Yep.
Because it's pretty common in optometry school. You might start out with maybe 7, 8 patients in a day. You're kind of at your max. In the real world, you're going to probably see more patients than that. And but I'm going to kind of even go a little bit beyond maybe what most people associate with a full schedule. So your schedule can get rather busy where our practice is growing, and it's not unusual for you to see up to 25 patients in any given day. Are you comfortable with that? Is that an acceptable load for you? How do you feel about that?
So really, real quick, there's really 2 scenarios here. Either you're comfortable with it or not. I'm going to approach both. Let's just do the quick one. Look, I understand that practices get busy, and for me, that's not a problem. I'm going to learn a lot. That type of rapid pace will really make me comfortable with getting to diagnose quickly and accurately, and it'll make me fast on my toes. So I welcome that opportunity. I'm ready for it, and I think ultimately the other perks to this practice absolutely balance that. I know that might not be right for everyone, but it's right for me. Okay. In the other situation, if you're not comfortable with it, this is the important part about goals, right? That I said in episode 1, where you know, what are your long-term goals? Where do you want to end up? And one of those things to think about is, what do you want your day-to-day life to be like? Very busy schedule, or more laid back, more relaxed? So in this situation, I'll answer it in that way. So look, I understand. I was under the assumption, based on just what I had heard or in our phone screening, that I knew this practice was busy, but I think I was under the understanding it would be roughly like 16 patients, maybe on a busy day, like 17 or 18. But to hear that 25 patients about 4 out of the 5 days a week, I'll just be honest with you and transparent. It's not really where I want my career to go, or ultimately the way I want my day-to-day to be. I'm really aligned with my goals and ensuring that every day I come to work, it's a perfect fit where we really hear that click, And seeing that many patients doesn't really fit with the doc I'm trying to become or the day-to-day that I want. I'd much rather just be honest with you and let you know that. Perhaps there is a way we can still work something out where maybe my patient load could be less. I will be a great doc and ensure the practice has a lot of growth. But look, I totally understand that the patient flow is the patient flow, and in that case, other candidates might be better than I am. I'd rather just tell you now up front and be honest with you rather than saying that, oh yeah, I can do it, and then having problems later down the line. But look, worst comes to worst, I'm a local doc in the community, love to have a relationship with you, but I don't think that patient volume is best for me at this time.
Yeah, and I think that's a great response. I think it's definitely better to be honest if you don't feel that you can see that many patients, or maybe you don't want to see that many patients. It's a lot of patients.
That could go for really anything. If they're asking things that don't align with your goals, that's one way to approach it. Sometimes you maybe want to suck it up and do it, but not every time.
Yeah, and at the end of the day too, it's 25 patients is a lot of patients. Some practices, you might even see more than that. It really depends. But I think it's important to be honest and open. But not just that, but you kind of suggested a sort of meet me in the middle, or you presented a solution along with your response, which was important. And that was, maybe we can work out my schedule, maybe open up another day, maybe extend the hours. There's always something that can be done. So I think that's probably the best way to approach it. So that, and it might be hard because you might say, geez, if I be honest, I'm never going to get this job. But you'd be surprised. If they like you enough, if they like what they've heard up to this point in your interview, they'll do what they need to do to keep you.
Sure.
So can you just tell me where you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? As you know, I'm getting older. I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and eventually transitioning this practice over to someone I can trust is definitely in my long-term goals. It's one of my plans. Can you tell me how you feel about that?
So I'll help you answer this question in both ways. What the doc is alluding to is partnership, it seems. And so let's go the route of you do want to be a partner and you don't. Let's start with you do. Where I see myself in 3 to 5 years is constant growth. I'm a lifelong learner. It's about the journey. So 3 to 5 years is really where I'm going to be ramping up and hopefully just beginning to my peak of my career. I want to be learning, doing all the things I said I was going to do around practice growth. But for me, ownership is key. I am very into my work. I'm an owner of my work, and I put my heart and soul in it. My work is my baby. So, when I think about working at your practice, having it become part of my own is so important to me, and I know I will treat it and continue the legacy that a doctor would at their practice. So absolutely, partnership sounds great. It is in my long-term goals. There's a million ways we can go about that. Obviously, perhaps today isn't for that time. We can discuss that so you can maybe understand what is on my mind. But ultimately, in 5 years, I would love to be a full owner, but perhaps a partner prior to that. And I've thought about that for quite a long time. And like I said, I've always been building that business and cultivating that business side because I am absolutely, in a few years, ready to take that on. So that's my goal, and I'm really glad that you're open to that because that's very important for me in the long term.
Yeah, wonderful. So on the flip side.
Yeah. So I understand maybe it sounds like you're looking for a practice partner. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Look, so I totally understand. For me, every day I want to come to work, give it my best, help a practice grow, and absolutely help you hit your goals. But I've always known that ownership of a practice isn't really for me. There's a lot of other areas of my life that are really important, and I understand that owning a practice, being a business owner, requires things that maybe I'm not particularly good at or not fond of, or just a direction I don't really want to bring my life. But look, that's not to say I don't have great work ethic, and that's not to say I won't be helpful for the practice. I want to come in, give it my all, but ultimately I want to be able to pursue with my time different things at the end of a day. I am more than happy to help you find that right partner, but I would love to be part of your practice for a very, very long time. I just know that ownership isn't for me. But I feel that even if another doc does own it, I can be incredibly helpful. We can continue to be a multi-doctor practice, and I'll support that doc in whatever they want as far as their mission goes for ownership. But I just don't think it fits well with me. So I wouldn't want to tell you that I'm going to take it on if it's not something I ultimately want to do. But just understand, it's not that I won't have the work ethic of an owner. I just don't really enjoy that side of things. I never pictured myself really as a business owner, but more as someone who helps a business on their mission.
Yeah. Yeah, and you might not know yes or no at this point, and if you don't, you can also be up.
Yeah, that's something I always was entertaining in my mind. I'm unsure at this time. Is there a certain deadline you need to know that by, or is that something you'd be open to talking about over the next year or two?
Yeah, I think it's something that I'd be open to talking about
Right.
as you continue to grow and in the practice.
Yeah, learning more about your practice, what the financial side looks like, what the long-term goals are. Certainly open to that. I think it'll just take a little bit more time for me to truly answer that question.
As you know, I'm going to be fully transparent with you. We've had, you're the 7th person interviewing here this week, and just why should I hire you?
I understand you've got a lot of great candidates, and I'm sure they're excellent. For me, it's not about me being better than them. It's about me being better than myself, the self I was yesterday. I'm always constantly improving, but I think I'm the best because I truly fit what this practice needs. There's 3 things that separate me. 1, I bring ocular disease to this practice, and I'm going to bring it with a turnkey solution, not just clinical care. Number 2, you need practice growth, and I've got those marketing and advertising skills, and to get started in marketing is pretty simple, and I could bring the basics. And number 3, patient relationships have always been really key to me, and I understand that you guys are a laid-back vibe here in Encinitas. You have roots in the community, and so do I. And I can absolutely bring those things and build great, deep patient relationships where they bring their families and bring their friends. So the ocular disease side, marketing and advertising to grow the practice, and building great patient roots, that's going to be a very long-term success, and ultimately I think it's going to help the bottom line of the practice, and we're all going to have a great time doing it. So that's why pretty straightforward.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and
so I'll just throw in a tip around that real quick. I think this is what I recited there is something you should practice and know going in. It will help you for that question, or if someone ever gives you a difficult question. So the way to formulate that answer is to find 3 things that help you stand out. It could be a little bit different for every practice, but know what those things are going in. So no matter what situation you're thrown into, you can always break that out. You want to practice this 1 line or 2. So these are the things that make me great. These are the things that help me overcome difficult situations. These are the things that will help me increase your bottom line. And so you want to practice that one-liner. It just is a nice, neat package that ties it all up. and will make you stand out, as opposed to other candidates who don't really know that or give a weird answer. Right. Have a one-liner canned and ready.
There you go.
Lastly,
any questions for me?
Yeah, I guess the number one question would be, what does a great candidate here look like? Who are they inside, and kind of what skills do they have outside?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I would say that what we're looking for is somebody who matches the culture and community of our practice. And it's very, very important that the person that we bring on is able to interact with and build strong relationships with our patients, because we've had patients here who have been coming here for years. Their kids are coming here, their grandchildren are coming here, so we're very much so a community here. And we want someone who also can be part of that. So,
also another question, how often would you like to meet with me so we can ensure that my progress is great, that if there's any issues, they're addressed? I'm sure I'll have points you can critique or things that I can improve, and I love that feedback. I'm open to that feedback. Is there how often would you like to meet? Is it quarterly, daily? How can we ensure that I'm staying on track?
Yeah, so we typically do have weekly staff meetings where everyone gets together and we just look at the health of a practice as a whole. But certainly we can schedule some time together, just kind of a one-on-one. And that can be, maybe in the beginning, could be weekly, just until you kind of find your feet in the practice, and then we can kind of see how that goes and kind of extend those monthly and then quarterly, and then maybe never, because hopefully you'll take over my practice and I can retire into,
There we go. Yeah. So those are some great questions that you could ask, just 2 of them. I think you want your questions to be both inquisitive so you learn something, but one more chance to kind of demonstrate the way you think. So the first one I asked is like, what is the type of candidate? What qualities do they have? So it shows you're thinking deeper about personalities. How can I improve? Once again, it's about you. It's about bringing value. So ask those types of questions.